Okay, in this video we're going to go through Appendix B, creating a histogram using Excel. This is the follow-on to Appendix A where we created a frequency table. Now we're doing a histogram. We're going to start here in our Excel file. Again, I have my cursor inside the table of our VFT data, and I'm going to go back to the Insert tab, but this time I'm going to move over here to the PivotChart menu item. Click on here, and then you'll see a dialog box similar to what we saw before. Again, I have the marching ants around my entire data set, and again I'm just going to let it make a pivot chart in this new worksheet and go from there. This should look familiar to what we did with the frequency table, except now in this box here we'll get a chart eventually. Again, I want to make a histogram of heights, so off in our fields over here I'm going to grab height and again drag it to the bottom left hand corner. You may notice that each of these titles here has changed from the frequency table, but their function is the same. So you can in some ways ignore these names and put things where you recognize they should go. I'm also going to grab a height and drop it down here in the values box. As I had before, it gives me the sum of height instead of count, so I'm going to left click, choose value field settings, and then I'm going to choose count, hit OK, and now I have the counts. Again, these are cadet heights in inches, so this says that there were 7 cadets who were exactly 5 feet tall back at the time this is recorded. Alright, I am now going to right click inside here and choose group, and following the instructions of Appendix B, I'm going to change my by to 5 and click OK. That's my group size or my bin size, and then I have this histogram here. You can tell from the shape it is symmetric, it's bell-shaped, looks roughly like a normal distribution. Now we're pretty much done according to the outline of what Appendix B would have us do. The last thing that we might want to do is make it look a little prettier. There's a few things that we can do to kind of sharpen this up a little bit. It's a matter of opinion, but some people like having thicker bars and fewer or smaller space in between there. So if I were to right click on any bar and choose Format Data Series, I can come over here and change the gap width to something very small, like say 5%, and now my bars are very large. One of the principles of a good graphic is to have a meaningful title, so I'm going to change this to the distribution of cadet height. We should recognize that we need axis labels, and so one way to get them is to click on my graphic, select the plus sign, and choose axis titles. And then down here this is going to be height, inches. Units are important. And then my axis title over here, we will name this as number of cadets. I don't particularly need this legend item since there's only one thing here, so I'm going to click on this plus sign again and remove the legend. Finally, I have these gray boxes here that are part of the pivot chart. I don't really need them, so I'm going to right click on this height here, and I'm going to select the hide all field buttons on chart option. And now I have a good looking histogram for my data set. This is where Appendix B ends, and I will show you that you can do a few more things with a pivot chart that is pretty useful. One thing that I will show you that is similar to what we saw before is let's go ahead and break up our data according to gender. Now in order to go back to my pivot fields, pivot chart fields over here, I can click in this little box up here which shows my pivot table fields, and now that those menu items come back. Sometimes you can also click over here and things like that will bring it back. I'm going to scroll through my different fields, select gender, and I'm going to drag it down here to legend, upper right hand corner like we did before. And now notice here I have my counts for the number of women and the number of men that I had for each height category. This is a little bit hard to understand because there are some very small bars that don't show up very well. If I click on a bar, I can recognize that there was a short bar here for the two men who were in this height range before, and there are no women in these height ranges over here. It's also hard to know which ones are grouped together because we had our bars so close together. So I'm going to once again right click on a bar, choose Format Data Series, and instead of having my gap width be 5%, I'm going to make it quite a bit larger, just so that I can tell that these bars are grouped together. Another thing I'm going to do to make this graphic look a little better is I am going to go and group my chart differently. Instead of going by 5-inch gaps, I'm going to go by 3-inch gaps. That makes more sense in talking about someone's actual height, and hit OK. And now I can see that the men follow in the orange their own little bell curve, and then the women have their bell curve as well. Now a legend would be appropriate, so left click on the graphic, choose the plus sign, and then choose legend, and now I know for sure that the blue bars correspond to the women and the orange bars correspond to the men. The men's bell curve is much taller just because there's simply a lot more men here at VMI. One more example that we will show. I am going to go to the VS War data set, which has a lot of information about wars in the world. My cursor is already within the data set. I'm going to click on Insert, Pivot Chart. Leave it on the new worksheet and just click OK. One of the data points or field values is the length of the war in days. I'm going to make a histogram of that. Click on length days and drag it down to the bottom left hand corner, and then again to the bottom right hand corner. Again, I have sum of length and I want count, so left click, valued field settings, count, click OK. Now this histogram is really confusing to look at first, but what's happening here is that there was one war of length 5 days, one war of length 6 days, one war of length 9 days, so forth. Down here, there was 3 wars of length 19 days, which is this tall bar here. But basically, since we are so specific in number of days of the war, most bars are just length 1. And this is not useful. Let's go ahead and group them. As suggested in the text, not in the appendix, but in the text, let's go ahead and group these by a year. I'm going to start at 1 day and go by 365 days, or length of 1 year, and hit OK. Now this represents 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, so forth, and I can see that my distribution is skew right. There are many wars that were relatively short in period and in length of time, and then the number of wars that were longer stretch out to the right hand side. It's also important to notice that when Excel makes a pivot chart, if there are gaps in the data, the gap does not show up within the pivot chart. So notice that this goes to 365, and the next one starts at 366, 730, 730 goes to 731, 1095 goes to 1096, 1460 goes to 1461, 1825 goes to 1826, but then 2190, 2190 days jumps to 2556. So we're missing something here. So what would be good for us to do is, if I really wanted to make a chart that I was going to use somewhere else, I'm going to copy this data, Control C, I'll come down here, I'm going to give myself some space, and hit Control V. And then what I want to be able to do is talk about this in terms of its actual length. So I have a gap here, and I'm going to copy, or actually cut these and bring them down, and then by hand I can type in 2191 through 2555, and I have 0 wars there. But then I also have other missing numbers here as well. In order to figure out what those are going to be, I'm going to use a little trick of Excel. I have put in the last two numbers for these two categories. I'm going to click on them, and I'm going to drag them down. And notice that it's carrying on by a gap of 365. So now I can take this data point here, and it looks like this one should go down here. So I'm going to cut and paste here, and then I can fill in 2921 through the number before, or right here, so 3285, and then 3286 through 3650. And for each of these I also had 0 wars. Now that I have this, I can highlight these, go to my insert menu, come over here to column or bar charts, and I'll select this as my bar chart. Looks very similar to what I had before, except it has the appropriate gaps. So what this really highlights is that my data is far more skew right than I originally thought. All right, this will end the video. You have now seen everything that you need to know about Appendix B, and also a little bit from the text as well.